So one thing you may have noticed, or at least I have noticed, is that in the last year or two, album cycles have started to move at such a faster pace compared to a few years ago. And something that got my attention about this topic was these tweets I found on Twitter, talking about when albums would often have a longer run, at least 5 singles lasting about a year. Some examples I can give is Ariana's My Everything album and Justin Bieber's Believe album. But sometimes it wouldn't even stop there. There would be album cycles that would last 2 to even 3 years, such as Taylor Swift's album 1989 with 7 singles, or Katy Perry's Teenage Dream album, including the reissue of the album with a total of 8 singles. Now, it's not to say that every album needs to have a long run. Sometimes even keeping it short can still give it enough time to have an impactful moment. However, when comparing to the longer album runs in the 2010s and 2000s and before, in the last 2 years in the 2020s, besides eras starting to feel shorter, there's also seems to be more artists picking 3 singles or at most 4 singles. Of course, it's not to say that long album cycles don't exist anymore in the 2020s, because there have been, such as After Hours by The Weeknd, Sour by Olivia Rodrigo, Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa, Planet Her by Doja Cat, and SOS by SZA, including the reissued deluxe edition of SOS, Lana. Of course, there are more longer eras, but these were the ones that crossed my mind. So just from these, it's clear that the long album cycles has not faded. It's just that maybe in the last 2 years, things just feel a little bit different now compared to even the early 2020s. So when trying to figure this out, I think, of course, the clear answer is streaming. It's one of the things that definitely did change things when it comes to music. Compared to the past, before streaming and even platforms like YouTube existed, radio was one of the main sources for discovering music, and then of course later on, networks like MTV and VH1 would show music videos. It was like a limited number of songs, artists that people had access to. People were able to stay with that music a lot longer, especially when it came to buying CDs and supporting their artists. It wasn't like back then they were able to easily access all these artists. People were limited and didn't have all the sources that were available today to find more. I guess that's why when you look at the 2010s, that was the last moment where people sat with new music much longer, because though people were online using social media, society hadn't fully adjusted to it quite yet. They were just starting to when the 2010s started, and streaming was still new at that time still. But in the world today, now the world has already adjusted fully to streaming services. And with streaming services, you're able to, access every song ever released pretty much. If you don't like something, you can quickly change it. And then another thing that I started to think about when it comes to this is people's attention span started to change, and it started to get a lot shorter. With streaming services and social media like TikTok, you can easily access information in just seconds. And with so much new music being released every week, there's so much to discover and dive into, which makes it really hard to get people's attention. So when I looked more into this online to see if I can find more people talking about how they feel about album cycles feeling shorter now, I did find 2 sources on Reddit. One discussion that was started by pop heads, and then the other by hip hop heads. And when I looked at the responses, it pretty much mentioned of what I already talked about, that streaming changed it all. People's attention span had changed and gotten shorter. And when scrolling down, I found 2 responses that I wanted to share. The first one being from user Russell_Beastbrook17 that said, "The internet moves fast now. No matter what you are, you can be the most popular show of all time and only have at least 2 or 3 months period if you're lucky. That's just how media is. Doesn't mean it's gone. Also, the day people realize that social media is not all the people or a true whole reflection of the public's opinion or then these type of questions will be answered." And that's another thing that I do forget. I admit I'm guilty of this. I forget that the internet is like a whole complete different world. Whatever's trendy here, whatever you see a lot happening here that is talked about outside of the internet. Some people may not actually know about those songs or those trends. Yeah, it's just 2 different worlds. The internet and real life. I think another thing is to, when you look at the Billboard charts, there's songs on there and you see some of the same songs still trendy that was from 7 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe even a year. I don't know if Billboard is the best way to say, oh, it's a reflection. I guess it is a bit of a reflection of everything, like real life, sales, digital and all that. I guess it is a reflection of all of it kind of combined. So this is the last one that I wanted to share from user Ed Daughter, who said, I think it's mainly the world and music just moves too fast. I think every album doesn't have as much breathing room as they used to. Also, from a journalistic and critique point of view, they always want to give the album 1 to 2 listens to post their articles and scores. Maybe not for clicks or views, but they feel they can post their thoughts after the reaction listen or second listen. Personally, I feel albums should be treated as more special and to be spent more time on, but I know we're in the playlist and singles era. Yeah, it is a bit hard to kind of stay up to date on a lot of stuff because things move so fast online and it feels so quickly that it's so hard to kind of sit still with something for so long. There have been times when I hear a song for the first time or an album, and like an album, maybe there's just 2 songs I like. It happened with Midnights with Taylor Swift. I could not get into that album. I only like 2 songs, Lavender Haze and I guess it was Bejeweled. I don't know what happened, and I heard it like 3 times, and those were the only songs I really found myself going back to. But then after a week later, I decided, okay, let me give it another listen. And maybe it's because I was in a better headspace. Suddenly the album just started to really connect with me, and I started to find myself enjoying the whole project. It turns out I just needed time with it, and also maybe I just wasn't in the mood to hear new music, because sometimes there are albums or songs that instantly grab my attention and I love it. I don't know, the early 2020s there were some longer albums even though we were in lockdown, because Chromatica, I still remember Chromatica and After Hours and all that. I still felt like I was living in those eras, but like ever since the world opened up, it just feels like eras don't feel the same anymore. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel that album cycles are getting shorter now, and which do you prefer, shorter album cycles or longer album cycles? If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.